After these two, Deborah Turness and Tim Davie, have resigned, has the BBC finally recognised its deep-running issues with institutional bias? Well, by the looks of it, no, they are in denial, because Deborah Turness has spoken to Sky News and insisted there is no institutional bias at the BBC. Take a listen.
I would like to say it has been the privilege of my career to serve as the CEO of BBC News and to work with our brilliant team of journalists. I stepped down over the weekend because the buck stops with me. But I'd like to make one thing very clear. BBC News is not institutionally biased. That's why it's the world's most trusted news provider.
Why did you fail to deal with the mistakes that were made?
And see my teams. Thank you so much for
being
here.
Do you think that the journalists are corrupt like President Trump says? Do you think the journalists
our journalists aren't corrupt. Our journalists are hard-working people who strive for impartiality, and I will stand by their journalism.
Is there institutional bias at the BBC?
There is no institutional bias. Mistakes are made, but there's no institutional bias.
But why weren't the mistakes dealt with on Trump, on anti-Semitism, on women's rights?
I'm sure that story will emerge, but for now I'm going to go in and see our team.
Do you think the board acted against you? Do you think the board acted against you?
This way, Deborah.
Thank you.
So there we go. She says she stands by the journalism of her hard-working journalists. She accepts there's been the odd mistake, but she is refusing to accept that there is a bias issue at the BBC, and she is not the only one saying this. We've had Samir Shah just now, who is the chair at the BBC. He has disputed the claim that there is institutional bias at the BBC. He's written a very long letter, that is just the cover page, to Parliament, where they will be discussing the BBC's future and this issue at length. They are desperately trying to rescue themselves here. I will not read you the whole letter because it is pages and pages long, but to cut a long story short, within this letter, he is denying the claims about systemic bias at the BBC, and also he has denied a lot of the claims of Michael Prescott, who is the one who leaked that memo to the Telegraph that he claims that BBC bosses just shoved under the rug, ignored, and didn't take seriously. So he says that Michael Prescott was wrong about systemic bias in the BBC. Asked if Mr. Prescott was wrong in his claim, Mr. Shah told the BBC about systemic bias. Yes, I think, however, first of all, just let me point out, I don't think the letter is fairly characterised as saying Mr. Prescott is wrong. Let me be clear, he's not. He raised many issues which we take very seriously indeed, really seriously indeed. And he said that Mr. Prescott's letter pointed to underlying problems and individual mistakes, insisting we've taken action on both. So insisting that they took steps to address the issues that Michael Prescott raised. Again, accepting that there have been mistakes made, but refusing to accept that there is a deep-rooted issue with bias at the BBC in their coverage in general. Now let's take a look at some of the reaction to this huge news about those resignations of the Director General Tim Davie and Deborah Turness, the CEO of News. Donald Trump, of course, put out a big crazy post on Trump's social saying the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, are all quitting/fired because they were caught doctoring my very good, perfect speech of January 6th. Thank you to the Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. They are very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our #1 ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. And Samir Shah, he does admit in that letter to the BBC that we were just having a look at, that the doctoring of Trump's speech did make it look like he was inciting violence. And the tweet that has really rocked the boat is Caroline Levitt's quote tweet of that. That is, of course, Trump's press secretary saying this: BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. That has got millions of views, that tweet, and as you can imagine, GB News very happy to see that from the White House, them telling people to watch GB News. Now, of course, there are people who think that this is all this toppling of Deborah Turner and Tim Davie, it's just all Trump's fault, that evil dictator. There aren't actually any issues at the BBC. Emily Maitlis is one example of this. Tim Walker said it should not be a matter for Trump, who runs the BBC. Emily Maitlis responded this, clearly agreeing with that statement. Alistair Campbell, he's said this: the real weakness of the BBC, as exemplified by recent weeks, is its failure to stand up to ludicrous claims from the right that it is somehow hugely biased to the left. Listening to Telegraph journalists bleat about a biased BBC or Reform MPs enjoying more platforming than any minority party in history underlines that. This is the work of right-wing journalists and owners working hand in glove with right-wing forces inside the BBC to undermine it. The Labour government needs to help the BBC stand up for itself and clear out those forces that want the BBC to fail. No, sorry, I completely disagree with that, Alistair Campbell. Get out of your London bubble and recognise that it is the BBC that does not represent the centre impartial view in this country. They are left wing, but this is the thing, is in his bubble and the bubble of people that work at the BBC, their idea of the middle ground is actually where the BBC puts it. But because they don't know real people in this country and what people really think, and they can't possibly believe the polls that suggest that Reform are ahead, and they are the biggest party, they just don't get it. They just don't get it. They do believe that they are impartial, but they don't understand where the centre ground is because they're out of touch. Ed Davie, he says, it's easy to see why Trump wants to destroy the world's #1 news source. We can't let him. The BBC belongs to all of us here in the UK. The Prime Minister and leaders from across the political spectrum should be united in telling Trump to keep his hands off the BBC. Oh my gosh, the lefties are throwing such a tantrum. Also, one other comment: the Israeli embassy in the UK, they've also put out a statement. They are very, very happy with this news. Of course, they say the BBC has consistent failures to uphold the standards of accuracy, impartiality and integrity expected from a public broadcaster. The BBC's reporting, especially by BBC Arabic, has too often distorted reality, omitted vital content and provided a platform for anti-Semitic and extremist narratives. This failure has contributed to public misinformation, hostility towards Israel and Jewish people, and tragically, the radicalization of audiences in the UK and across the Middle East. That is pretty damning. They say, we hope this moment will serve as a turning point. The BBC must seize this opportunity to restore public trust by ensuring fair, factual and balanced coverage of Israel and the Middle East. Accountability and transparency must replace denial and defensiveness. Now, I completely agree with that. I hope that this will be a turning point for the BBC, where they actually take a look at themselves and realise, you know what, we've got some deep standing issues here, deep running issues here. We need to actually have a big refresh and make sure that we are doing our jobs properly, else we will not survive. But as I said, they're in denial. Deborah Turness, no institutional bias at the BBC. Samir Shah, no institutional bias. People like Ed Davie, Emily Maitlis, and all these people coming out saying, oh, it's just all Trump's fault. He forced them to resign. Also, let's take a look at what Nigel Farage has said about the BBC this morning.
The BBC has been institutionally biased for decades.
Well, that went down well.
I well remember the Wilson report 2 decades ago, saying the BBC were not covering areas like Europe and immigration with any sense of impartiality. And you could, add on to that net zero, climate change, all their interpretation of the horrors that have happened in Gaza. And now, of course, the United States president. I spoke to the president on Friday. He just said to me, is this how you treat your best ally? It's quite a powerful comment, isn't it? It's quite a powerful comment. So there's been too much going for too long. You might have noticed, Harry, that last year 500,000 people stopped paying the license fee. The year before, 500,000 people stopped paying the license fee. If the BBC doesn't now get a grip, get somebody in from the outside, somebody who has got a history and a culture of changing organisations, of turning them around, then I think what you would see within the next couple of years are many, many millions just refusing, just not wanting to have the licence fee.
So there we go. Nigel Farage, very damning of the BBC there, not hiding at all from the fact that there are huge, huge bias issues at that organisation. And he has been speaking to Talk this morning on the phone, saying that he absolutely will scrap the licence fee if and when he gets the keys to Number 10. So the BBC are going to be quite scared of Farage now. He is not giving them any slack whatsoever. I'm Chloe Dobbs. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please do hit the subscribe button down below if you've not already, so you see more of our content on your feed. See you next time.